Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where I feature top leaders in healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Arizona Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so they can connect better with their family and friends and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about helping patients is because I lost my brother Robbie twice. First from his hearing loss from radiation to his brain tumor, and then again when he passed away. I only care for ears. I'm the E of ENT who's performed over 10,000 ear surgeries over the past 20 years. I'm the founder of the Arizona Hearing Center. I'm the author of Listen Up. Go to listenuphearing.com or go to arizonaazhear.com to contact us with questions or email us with support. Today, I have Dr. Strasser here. He grew up in Prescott and he attended the University of Arizona for both undergraduate and medical school. He completed his ENT residency at University of Cincinnati. He returned to Prescott in 2001 to practice ENT. He's a great dad, father, and colleague. It's great to have him on Listen Up. Mark, welcome to Listen Up. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. This is great. So tell me a little bit. I love hearing your medical journey. How did you decide to become an ENT and end up practicing in Prescott, Arizona?
Yeah. So I grew up here and have a father who was an ENT. And so I had obviously intimate knowledge of what that was about. And as a kid, I kind of had a lot of healthcare experiences, maybe more than the average kid, in part because I had a dad that was a doc, and I worked in his office, so to speak. I cleaned rooms and did some of the custodial work. And then at an outpatient surgical center, I did some of the yard work. So I was kind of around it a decent amount, and his friends and colleagues, of course. Didn't necessarily have a goal to be a doctor or even a medical person. He never at all pushed it. That the work there was just to earn money because it was frankly a job that I could easily get.
Right.
You're
telling me it wasn't a tough interview.
It wasn't a tough interview. No. There were though expectations that may have superseded that which other people might have faced. But anyhow, so I also was around the hospital. I had a buddy his dad was a general surgeon, and my dad didn't, but his dad had an account in the cafeteria, and so we'd go eat donuts there a lot in our little town hospital, kind of like those little ones. If you've ever worked in any of those small town hospitals when you're a residency or whatever, there's always some really friendly lady that's selling donuts.
Letting you charge it to your buddy's dad.
Letting you charge it to your buddy's dad's account.
That's awesome.
Of course, donuts and hot dogs and things at a hospital, you always kind of laugh at. But anyway, so there was all that. And then, so went to, college and figured it out that that's what I want to do. Actually, I was going to be a vet for a little while and worked in one of our local vet clinics. And was kind of the guy that would hold the dog down while they gave him the shot or put him to sleep or whatever. And horses too, and things like that. But then I got away from veterinary in part because it just seemed like you could, if it was anything complicated, you just put the animal down. Nowadays, they do orthopedic surgery on dogs and frontal lobotomies and dental work and whatever. It's amazing how that
has evolved.
That has evolved.
You were doing big animal.
All of it.
Oh, all of it.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have like reptiles very often or anything like that, but yeah, mostly the cats and dogs and the horses.
Yeah. There's a veterinary dermatologist down the street from my house.
Really? Yeah. Well, the first nasopharyngeal anatomical experience I had was, how when you worm a horse, worming a horse is meaning you basically stick an NG tube down them and you pour a bunch of, anti-parasitic medication into their stomach, or you shove it in there. So that was my first experience. That and checking the pregnant animals with the big long sleeve.
Right.
Anyways, that was my youthful medical experience. And then yeah, figured it out. I wanted to be a doctor after all, and wasn't necessarily going to be an ENT. Went through the usual process and kind of like pediatric stuff a lot, but didn't necessarily want to necessarily see kids all day long. So, like surgery, went that route, and ended up. So my dad was from Cincinnati, and went to the University of Cincinnati, and more importantly, my extended family lived back there. So I went back and hung out with grandma for a month and did one of the external medical student internships, and really loved it there. And that's really how I connected back there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I always say, look for people who are happy. That's kind of where I went. And so, I'm sure your dad loved what he did, because, we shared patients in common before he retired, and he really loved practicing with his patients. So that's a pretty good model or something to follow.
Yeah. And he went till he was like 72, and that's a pretty long career.
It is.
Didn't want to leave necessarily, but, realized it was about that time.
Well, good. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, he is. He's doing good.
That's great. So growing up in Prescott, I'm sure there are like great stories. Tell me like, a great childhood memory or story outside of, although I have to say the worming is a fun story.
Wow. Lots of great experiences. I may have to sort of be careful as to what stories I tell.
Well, they can be self-indicting, so you got to be careful what you say. And there might be statutes of limitation. So that's the other thing you have to be careful of.
All right. Well, one kind of funny thing was when you do your high school prank, every year there's a prank of some sort. At least that was the tradition here. And there were things like, I remember one group got a VW bug and put it up on top of the dome of our high school basketball arena.
Wow,
that was hard. That's hard to beat, right? Mm-hmm. But my buddies and I decided we were going to go, this is kind of lame, but we took a bunch of real estate signs for sale signs out of the yards of houses and planted them up, in the yard or the lawn of the school. And so there were hundreds of them. And
that's a great picture. Sure.
Later that night, some local sheriffs somehow found out who did this. One problem was that my truck, or my Scout, which is what I drove back then, we had left it in the parking lot. That was brilliant. So they tracked me down and took me in. And it was actually, those signs are not cheap. So you add them all up, it was felony level theft that I could have been charged with. And they were kind of messing with me a little bit.
I'm sure they throw you in the slammer, get you a little scared.
Yeah. I somehow got out of that, and we returned all the signs, or at least mostly, to where we thought they came from. So we were doing that all the next day and apologizing and yada yada. But anyways, that was a kind of a notable experience growing up, among many others.
That's one of those ones where it's like, I'm sure your parents were pleased.
They were very, they were proud. Showed some gumption.
That's awesome. I mean, anyway. The foolishness of youth in that respect, but no harm done. It sounds like a pretty good lesson and a pretty good experience.
Yeah, I learned our legal system was early. Yeah, like I should have become a lawyer. I don't know, an attorney. Yeah.
So when you grew up in Prescott, what was it like as compared to now? I mean, was it a cowboy town and like it is now as much?
Yeah, I always laughed at my brother. I remember my brother. My brother was he's a financial guy, and he went to the University of Chicago for business school. So he did a lot of stuff. I remember he was telling me about one of his essays he wrote in I remember him saying he grew up riding horses since he was knee high to a grasshopper, or some sort of silly thing like that back in Chicago. I think they bought that. We were not cow people. Obviously, I was the son of a doctor. A lot of friends, though, that were ranchers. All the communities went to the same high school. So Chino Valley and Prescott Valley and Dewey Humboldt barely was the community, but they all had the same high school. Actually, that's not true. Bradshaw Mountain was evolving back then, but local ranch kids were all bussed in from all over the place. So there was a lot of ag sort of, the FFA was certainly a big group, and there's still a significant representation of those folks and that way of life. And I hope to not lose it. It is such a major factor, major element to this community. Yeah. And we have the rodeo that everybody knows about that's lived around here, and it's the world's oldest. And have you ever been to it?
I have been to a rodeo. I haven't been to the one up there, but I've been to one.
You got to go to it. We actually had it last year with the pandemic thing. And, Prescott, we stood our ground in ways maybe people would approve or not approve. But that whole element is very cool. And a lot of my friends are in that world. And we are gentrifying a bit, as all communities might, with a lot of folks moving in, but it's still a cool element to the legacy and the history of this community.
It is. I mean, when you drive into Prescott, you can sense just the drive, the rolling through the hills, and the going into it. You can tell it's cowboy country.
Yeah, and my life is very much outdoors when I'm not working, and our family do all kinds of things outdoors. But yeah,
what type of stuff do you guys like to do?
Well, I'm mountain biking a lot. That's my big thing. We hike and go up north to ski here and there, and just get out a lot. The kids play all kinds of sports, and it's one of the great things, again, comparing it maybe to more urban centers, is for this last year when we had the pandemic, we were, did have things shut down, including school, and we're able to get out a lot. We weren't confined to apartments and houses, and that was huge mentally and physically.
Yeah, there's a lot of open space that's accessible, which is great.
Yeah,
that's great. So tell me, what's your favorite part of your medical day? What part do you get and don't tell me it's using your health records, please.
Yeah. My medical day. Well, I would say a great day is going to the outpatient surgical center and doing procedures that help people and working with awesome people that like what they do and are motivated to do a good job. We really I have just the greatest surgical center there is. I have great staff at my office too, and emphasis on the patient experience more than anything. But just that's a fun day. Perhaps if I don't have a full day, I'll go back to the office. But you know as well as I, the balance of surgery and non-surgical medical is one of the great attractions of our specialty.
Correct.
And
long-term relationships with some, and short-term, solve their problem with others. It's great. I love it.
Absolutely. And just using your hands to make people feel better is very rewarding. Can't really beat it.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what's your most memorable medical moment? So hopefully it wasn't stealing real estate signs as a physician.
No, I kind of gave that up. I had to go through a 12-step program for that. But medical moment, most memorable medical moment.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a lot. Again, some of them get kind of crazy. I'll say one of the fun. How about one of the funniest?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
One of the funniest was so in medical school, there was a patient. She was a very heavy lady. She was morbidly obese, and she was in an ICU, and she had multiple medical problems, and she had a fever. She was septic, and it was of unknown origin, unknown source. And as so a scan, it was a CAT scan that was done of her whole body. And as the medical student, was trying to be the first guy to get the results, and did get them. And there was a mass. There was a mass that was found, an unexpected mass, let's say in her torso, in her chest area. And so I brought that information. The ICU nurse and I were the first to. So we did the exam, and we actually found some old food tucked into some crevice in her body, and it was a cellulitis that she had.
Oh man, that's a shame.
Tucked into a little fold in there. That was a pretty, I not funny for the patient, but
unbelievable, right?
She did get better. We removed the offending food
particulate.
That was a very memorable experience, among many others. As you know, there's a lot of those funny things that happened.
Somebody's asking me.
Say when people,
I had a guy with a key fob in his mastoid.
What?
A car key fob. Somebody had stabbed him in his mouth. A car key fob. He came in walking, with like the key fob sticking out of his head.
It was sticking out kind of like a Baja.
Right, but you could. I was like wondering, could I open and close his car from his head?
That's amazing. Actually, one other one I thought of is a young man, a little 8 to 10-year-old that fell off his bunk bed. This was just crazy. This is just an odd story where a fishing pole entered his orbit and went into his cavernous sinus, but luckily did no damage. And so he has this broken fishing rod sticking out of his orbit. And so we took him to the OR, and everybody's holding their breath, and you have vascular.
Wondering what's going to happen when you take it out, right?
They took it out, and there's nothing.
It's the same with the key fob. Set it up, got it all prepped, draped, drill ready, scalpel crash cart, pull it out. Okay. See you later. Right, exactly. So
that's wild.
Mine was a bar fight gone awry. Yours was obviously a miscasting of a fishing rod.
Actually, one other very funny experience that I remember. This one just came to my head. And again, I'm not naming names. We won't throw people under the bus. But I remember an anesthesiologist and a surgeon getting into a physical fight.
Oh my God.
And luckily, it occurred outside the operating room, so it wasn't affecting patient care. But that was wild. The anesthesiologist was like 6'7", but real thin. And the other guy was kind of 5'11-ish and very buff. Watching those two roll around on the floor and fight, this was when I was a resident, was absolutely astounding.
Were they attending?
They were.
Wow.
Yeah. They were both very well-known guys. Won't name names. They're probably retired now.
Hopefully. That's pretty amazing, actually.
That was wild.
Yeah, those are all good ones. I mean, and laughing is the only response for all this stuff.
Absolutely.
So speaking of ENT, who were your ENT role models, and what was some of the advice they gave you as you were?
Okay, well, getting back to serious. So my dad obviously was the first and lasting role model. We all have those folks in training, and particularly in residency. And I would not want to leave people out in case everybody's listening to this. But our chairman, guy named Jack Gluckman, was just a real gem of a person. He was everybody loved him. He was internationally known. He was from South Africa and knew people all around the world, and just a really nice, pleasant man. And that's hard to do in that kind of a high demanding job.
And to get to that level and be nice.
And you would totally understand if he was rude at times, but he really never was to anybody. I mean, he was serious, and he was demanding and made us work, but had a heart of gold. And so that's a guy that would be a tremendous role model throughout my life. But there were plenty of others.
Work hard and be nice. I mean, those aren't hard concepts, but hard to necessarily sometimes do, right?
Hard to sustain.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I always say it's people. I mean, there's some people are nice only to people they have to be nice to. It's really the people who are nice to everybody that matter, right?
And it would be the custodian, and it just didn't matter. It was not fake.
Right.
And genuine people like that mean a lot to me. I just think that we only have so many years on this earth and so many relationships, and there's lots of them, but it's great to have somebody as a mentor to guide people that, and be putting people out in the community that hopefully mirror that, and selecting people to get the privilege to be an otolaryngologist. Because I will say, I am so pleased to end up in this field within medicine. I just feel so blessed every day. We got pretty lucky, and I was lucky enough to have my dad show me the way. A lot of you and isn't your brother maybe an ENT?
Yeah, so yeah,
I think I read that.
Right. That's right. So I have a brother.
We were lucky to have people show us this, but and I have that much more respect for people that didn't have those experiences and figured it out, because it's a good get. And, I mean, everybody I don't want to diminish what other specialties have, obviously, but we know
like
how
my
great,
world.
and you and I both know how kind of envious a lot of our colleagues are of our work.
If they're happy in their field, that's great. I just feel blessed to be able to do what I do. That combination of long-term relationships, short-term relationships. I was just commenting to a patient the other day. I met her, 12 years ago. She's hearing impaired. She says, I don't want a cochlear implant. I was like, okay. So she got her first one finally, like 11 and a half years later. And then 2 months later, she's coming in for her second. And I was like, do you remember when? And it was just like that whole evolution, and be able to go through that with somebody. It's a great privilege. It really is.
It absolutely is. Yep.
That's great. Well, Mark, one of the things I ask everybody is like, so, say you're accepting Lifetime Achievement Award, who do you thank? Who are the people that you say, hey, thank you? I mean, who are those people? Because I think it's great to shout them out for them.
Well, you always got to start for me with Mama and Papa. They brought you into the world and they got you so far along. And so you always start with those two for me. And then I would always, of course, then mention my wife, and you and I know how it is not easy being married to doctors and going through residency and training. And
come on, it's a cruise.
I remember when we were interns, the first day or the first couple day speech we got was, okay, look around you. Those of you that married, half of you are going to be divorced. Somebody gave us that speech, within 5 years or whatever. And that was real uplifting, going into the, but anyway.
My father was an internist. He used to say, medicine is a very demanding mistress.
Yes, you're right.
I was like, and so that's why, for me, actually, it took me a long time to decide this is what I wanted to do. I was like, that's not a really strong sell, Dad.
Right. Yeah. And, my dad worked pretty hard, so I saw the workload, but those would be the people I would start to thank. There are so many others that, if you got an hour and a Red Bull, we could go through, but that's where I'd start.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I appreciate that. I mean, I think, right, family matters, and having a teammate who's going to help you become more and help your family become more. There's nothing more that you can ask for in life than that. That's for sure.
No question. As we started the conversation before we went on the air, we ain't getting younger, and it becomes more and more obvious how important those relationships are.
Yeah. So everybody, I want to thank Mark. We've been talking to Mark Strasser of Prescott ENT. Mark, where can people get a hold of you? How can they get in touch?
Well, we have a website, of course, and just calling our office if they need an appointment.
What's the number?
928-778-9190.
Well, that's a good one. So, yeah. All right, great. Reach out to Dr. Strasser if you need anything. All right, Mark, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.